So let's get started with our first keynote presentation. Professor Marek Kowalkovitz is an academic and industry leader with extensive experience in conducting research, co-innovating with industry and university partners, and delivering innovative products to the market. Currently as chair in digital economy and founding director of the Centre for the Digital Economy, he leads QUT's research agenda to inform and influence a robust digital economy in Australia. He joined QUT from Silicon Valley, where he led innovation teams of one of the largest enterprise software vendors in the world. Before Silicon Valley, Marek worked in Singapore, Australia, and China. He is also a member of the State Library Board of Queensland. So Marek, over to you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marek Kowalkiewicz. I'm a professor and chair in digital economy at QUT. Thank you for having me at your session. Today, I wanted to talk to you about time machines, teleporters, and translators, the three types of organizations that are successful in the digital age. And I also want you to think about those three types and apply them to your libraries, to your daily work, and ask yourself, is digital transformation going to help me to transition my organization into one of those types of organizations, or perhaps more than just one of them? I want us all to discuss reimagining value in the digital economy. I have been focusing on this topic for a number of years now, since 2015, leading a digital economy group at Queensland University of Technology in Brisbane. Before that, I worked for large digital corporations around the world. And so I wanted to share some of my experiences with you today. Before we do it, though, I wanted to share some of the messages that I did share with some of you. Perhaps you've watched some of my keynotes at the previous events as a background for the session today. Those of you who remember will remember some of the messages here. Those of you who see it for the first time, well, this is the first time you're looking at it. We live in a world where digital corporations are upending traditional business models. They're getting us to reimagine what is the value proposition of any organizations. They keep reinventing the value proposition in this space. They keep exploring new channels of delivery of products and services and experiences. They create new styles of interaction. It's not just a typical business to customer or business to business type of interaction through digital channels, shop fronts, and so on. They create completely new ones. For instance, conversational agents, those smart speakers that we might have in our kitchens and in our cars. So completely new ways of interacting with us. But also they open up to new types of customers. When I talk about this category in a lot of my presentations, I talk about robots as customers, but it's much more than that. It's opening businesses to customers that they never thought about. It's like universities suddenly recognizing that, a student could be anyone, anywhere, regardless of where they physically are or what the stage in the journey of their lives is. Customers as competition, we start to see this world where individuals are becoming as powerful as large organizations. Platform as competition, where many organizations are brought together, and customers really often care more about the platform itself than the individual contributors to that platform. And finally, we're seeing employees as competition, an emerging trend around the world. And again, those organizations are often struggling, those that face employees as competition are often struggling to compete with individual. Think about this. This is the world we live in right now, and libraries are not immune from that. In fact, libraries are exactly in that space of information processing, where and knowledge processing and knowledge sharing, to use the language that Silicon Valley people would use. This is exactly the space that's being disrupted right now. So all those trends are applicable to where we all are. In some of my previous presentations, I also talked about the difference between digitization and digitalization. Some of the images in the slides today might be a bit complex, but really the message is very, very simple. digitization, sometimes called digital substitution, is the introduction of digital tools to replace traditional organizational practices, right? So you put a computer into a place where a human used to be, or you support a human with a machine, but they get to offer the same value to the recipients of the value. Whereas digitalization, sometimes called digital augmentation, is a different approach. It's an approach where once you have digitized your organization, once you have this technology that's supporting your humans, your employees, you ask yourself, what is some new value proposition? What is something completely new that I wasn't able to offer before that I'm able to offer now? Digitalization is opening up those opportunities. So I talk a lot about the difference between digitization and digitalization and how important it is for us to think about digitalization. What is possible that wasn't possible before? And finally, something that I didn't talk in previous presentations, but it really brings digitization and digitalization together through a lens of successful digital transformation that's based on our most recent research, where we look into organizations that have been successful in their digital transformation. What we found is that those that are successful are typically staying close to their customers' physical assets, data, human resources, and culture in those new ventures. So they don't try to come up with something brand new. Well, in a way it is brand new, but it's relatively close. It's possibly a new value proposition that's offered to the same customers that the organization already has, that's using the physical assets that the organization already has, data, people that work for the organization, and finally culture. So successful organizations that successfully transform digitally, are doing it in such a way that it's not a shock to them, that it's not something that's completely foreign to them. Keep it in mind. So these are the lessons that are really a background for the presentation today, and I promised you to talk about the three types of organization. Time machines, teleporters, and translators. Let's jump straight into it. Time machines are organizations that recognize the fact that time is one of the most precious resources that we all have. And coming back to the old days of Charles Babbage, and some of you would know that Lady Ada Byron, it was the first computer programmer. Well, she wasn't coding a traditional computer, but she looked at the difference engine, a technology, a machine that Charles Babbage designed to calculate complex mathematical equations. She looked at it through her lens of what she used to call poetical science, and she said, this machine or those machines in future are going to bring us humans together. They're going to enrich our interactions. They're going to enrich our time. It's a very particular notion of the sense of the time machine, one that enriches our time. And of course then, in 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, we started to see the emergence of corporations like Microsoft, with this famous photo of Bill Gates. I'm not really sure what he was thinking here, but Microsoft became one of those first time machine corporations. They created software that saves our time. When we use Microsoft Office, we really do it so that we have more time for other activities, because if we didn't have this type of applications, computers, software, we would have to spend a lot more time on performing mundane calculations, typesetting documents, and so on and so on. Those organizations are time machines because they give us our time back. So Microsoft, on this sort of scale of what's in the past, was one of those first organizations with time machines in mind. And there's many more. Clear, Walmart, or Netflix, organizations that you pay money to, and in return they race you through security lines at the airports or deliver goods to you at home, so you don't have to spend time getting to a shop and walking through aisles. And Netflix, you pay them so that you don't have to watch advertisements. They don't give you the time back really, but they give you the opportunity, the Netflixes of this world, they give you the opportunity to decide what you do with your time, that you would otherwise probably spend watching advertisements. So those are some of those time machines, and there's more of them, and we see them all around in Australia. It's effectively becoming one of those trends in technologies, in saving your customers time or enriching your customers' time. So business models are now starting to drive what is happening in this space. But what's coming? What's coming is introduction of a lot of algorithmic technologies that again replace some of the activities that we would normally be doing. We're not talking about Microsoft Office type of algorithms. We're talking about autonomous, often algorithms that can do work for us. There's a lot of challenges with that, and we have to be very, very careful in this space. We've seen a lot of disasters caused by irresponsible introduction or unconsciously irresponsible introduction of algorithms. People would introduce them in a good will, but without understanding the potential side effects or unintended consequences of those algorithms. But at some stage, we have to navigate those, what I like to refer to as 6 levels of automation, from no automation to fully autonomous algorithms. My point with this slide, though, is to draw your attention to the fact that majority of these types of interactions will involve humans, and we need to understand on which level we are to be able to properly work with those algorithms. Is your library a time machine? And I'm not only referring to saving your members, your visitors' time, but also, are you creating experiences, or are you delivering value that enriches the time of your members, of your visitors, being physical or digital visitors? A time machine library can take me into the past, can take me into the future, but while I'm at present, it can also squeeze my time and give some of my time back by perhaps helping me being more efficient, but also enrich that time. Ask yourself, am I using those digital technologies to become a true time machine for my members or visitors? So that's where we would be when it comes to the time machine. Now, the second type of organizations that I talked about are teleporters. Teleporters are those that do not sort of play with the fabric of time, they play with the fabric of space. They can take us somewhere where we're not at a given point in time. So a teleporter is one that allows us to be somewhere else. And with my background in technology in Silicon Valley, I'm obviously in love with some of the history of the field. And in 1968, we saw what is now referred to as the mother of all demos. Douglas Engelbart introduced this technology that allowed people to telecommute. That was the term back then, which was effectively Teams. We saw Microsoft Teams or Zoom or whatever else you're using in 1968. You can see a couple of stills from that demo. Doug Engelbart was basically demonstrating how he's able to present remotely to another collaborator of his, and in this case there was a bit of a sharing of text or those images, as well as the video images of Doug Engelbart himself. As you can see, him wearing a headset, not very different from what we were wearing over 40 years later. The mother of all demos, the first digital teleporter. And we started to see more of that, not just Doug Engelbart's demo, but in the 80s and 90s, we saw the emergence of the World Wide Web as the technology that allows us to be somewhere else, regardless of where physically we're located. And with COVID, we've seen those trends really combining and becoming even stronger. Most Americans plan to continue at-home workouts once gyms fully reopen. So many of us want to stay or keep working from home at least for part of the week. Cinemas were shocked when Disney decided to launch one of their movies, CAUL, through Disney Plus. So not through cinemas, the typical approach, but through streaming, recognizing the fact that we have so many technologies that allow us to experience or consume the value in a way similar to what we would see in a cinema. So in this particular case, and that's something I'd like you to pay attention to, Disney recognized that a lot of people during pandemic were investing in their homes, buying good speakers, buying good TVs, and so they realized that the homes are ready to be competing with cinemas. Disney Plus, together with the likes of Sonos, those who produce smart speakers or good quality speakers, basically created foundations for teleportation, for customers being able to experience the movies the way they should be experienced. And normally that was required. It was required for them to go to the movies, to the cinema. These days, we're able, many of us, not everyone, many of us are able to experience those movies in our home in a very similar way to those cinemas. We're seeing this combination, and that's very important for libraries, what I'm going to talk about, because libraries are very strong in this space. We're seeing this combination of great software, so applications that have fantastic user experience and really engage the customers, the users, great hardware. So a lot of organizations are building beautiful technology right now, and fantastic people that are adding life to all those services. And I'm using an example of Peloton, so those smart bikes that you might have at home, stationary bikes where you jump on it and you join a spinning class that's happening somewhere in Sydney, New York, or elsewhere with superstar coaches. So these are the people with a really excellent hardware. This is what you buy from Peloton, but also good quality or great software that's running the whole system. Now, libraries have fantastic, very committed people who are currently in the libraries physically there, but they also can use the fact that a lot of users, customers, members of libraries have technologies at home that allow them to visit remotely or to experience the libraries remotely. So that's the hardware. The missing piece is identifying the right software that brings it all together. And of course, I recognize that libraries will never be like Peloton, creating their own products and then sharing them with the market. But you could be like Disney Plus. You could be looking at those opportunities, saying, oh, a lot of people have great speakers. How can we tap into that? How can we use that as an opportunity for us to offer new types of services or better value to our members, our visitors? And so what's happening in the future? We're seeing this emergence of augmented reality. Systems like Supernatural, which allow you to exercise. Instead of going to a gym, you exercise at home, doing a lot of cardio exercises, but you are in this science fiction virtual world. That's more of a gimmick at the moment, but it really shows the opportunities of what is possible when it comes to reimagining how we spend our time. That concept of a third place could be actually happening in the first place at our homes. First, second, third place, right? So home, work, and where we socialize, that all collapses and combines together with the new technologies. And we're seeing that just a couple of hours ago, I walked virtually through a collection that State Library of Queensland had on display already about a couple of years ago. But it's virtual right now, and you can see the screenshot of my screen where I was walking through this past exhibition and I was engaging with that. Play with those technologies, try to experiment, see what your members, what your visitors say, whether they like it, whether they enjoy it. You could become a teleporter that allows people, regardless of where they are in the world, interact and get the value from your library. Is your library a teleporter? Ask yourself. Let's have a conversation about it in the Q&A. And so that's what we're seeing in the space of teleporters. The last one is translators, and this is probably the trickiest one to convey and specifically apply to libraries, simply because it often is used in the context of big data and analytics and crunching through the numbers, and that's really not what libraries are. Libraries are about sharing stories, cultural experiences, access to knowledge, not just crunching numbers, bits and bytes, of data. But having said that, those translators, and I get inspired a lot by old school science fiction, new school science fiction, those translators that allow us to interact with other cultures, communicate with them, understand them better. This is something that I also mean by those corporations, those new corporations that emerge. And yes, the likes of IBM that help us analyze the data, understand the data, and get insights into it, but they even get to translate it into systems that can then communicate with humans. This is the winner of Jeopardy, IBM's Watson system. So we can see those systems are becoming good enough to actually interact with us humans and display some levels of intelligence, not in the sense of general sort of type of intelligence that we humans have, but at least ability to answer complex question. Now, having said that, the way I see it more in the case of the libraries is that ability to help us understand the cultures of the world that we're in. And I'm using again the very same example of one of those initiatives of the State Library of Queensland, where I'm involved with some of my work. But as a library, you can be an organization that is a translator, one that helps individuals understand the world around them better and make better decisions. Understand the world around them better and make better decisions. Those words are often used in a corporate world when referring to analytical systems, but they can also be so powerful in the world of libraries. Help people understand the world around them and make better decisions. That's so human, really, as well. So, is your library a translator? That is a question to be asked as well. So, once again, we talked about time machines, teleporters, and translators as the three types of organizations that we're seeing as emerge successfully in the digital age. And I would like you to think about your own organizations and ask yourself, am I a time machine? Am I a teleporter? Am I a translator? Thank you so much for listening to me. If you would like to learn more about what we do or receive an occasional newsletter where I share my thoughts about what's happening in the world around us, just scan the QR code and follow the link and register. That's it for now, and I hope to be able to have a bit of a Q&A with you in the next few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thanks very much, Marek. That was a great presentation. As a self-confessed productivity, time-saving hack obsessed person, I think that idea of the first two in particular, the time machines and teleporters, are really appealing concepts to me. Where do you think, out of those three spaces, time machines, teleporting, and translation, libraries should be looking to first?
Look, it's really up to the individual library to choose the direction. I would say all three are just as important. The translators, it's all that the libraries have been doing so far for so many years. So it's really just the technology that now can make it a bit more efficient and perhaps enrich that. When it comes to the teleporters, this is something new, and I believe this allows libraries to become more equitable and reach out to those audiences who are possibly physically too distant from a library to experience some of the services or some of the value that a library offers. So I would say being a teleporter is very, very important, and I would encourage anyone in the library space to ask yourselves those questions. How can I be one like that? And I saw in the chat some of the questions around using a particular Microsoft technology to share some of the exhibitions. So it's really good to see that it's happening already now, and really those teleporters is one of those organizations that I think a lot of libraries should be looking to.
Yeah, I think about the way that I engage with my local public library, it's really all online, and some of it is actually away from the library's own spaces. It's in apps like BorrowBox or Libby, and so I wonder if you might comment on, Netflix is great at pushing content to us. So every time you turn on the TV, you get to see what's there already. You don't have to go looking for it. Have you seen any applications in other sectors, perhaps, where industries are doing that kind of Netflix-like experience of serving things up that we could learn from?
So this is something that is actually quite puzzling to me, recognizing the fact that libraries are in that sort of information science space, and there's a lot of experts in this space who really understand how those recommender systems and that type of technologies work. Yet when you look at an average library around the world, it's not really good at offering this hyper-personalized approach for the members where, let's use the most basic example. You borrow a book and then you bring it back. And the library, my library doesn't really tell me, hey, Marek, people like you or people who enjoy books like the ones that you enjoy also enjoy those books, right? There are approaches on a sort of more generic, sort of less personalized, perhaps less intrusive level, right? Where, libraries do this, but there's a huge potential in just that. And you mentioned Netflix. There's obviously a lot of those digital organizations like TikTok, for instance, that doesn't even ask you any questions. They seem to know what you like. They're very smart about those algorithms. You look at online bookstores, they're also really good at it. So those recommender systems are actually quite common in that space. Yet I think that is more of a gap right now. I haven't seen a lot of this just yet in the libraries, and I think it's a very low-hanging fruit if we were to use a bit of a buzzword here.
I think so too. And I think one of the things I've noticed is, in libraries, we tend to be very concerned about the privacy of our users' data, right? But as a user, I would love the library to exploit my reading pattern data and serve me the content. And I think that's something that might be perhaps inhibiting us in that space.
Well, you're 100% right, and that's a very important issue that you're raising. I would flag that a lot of libraries have people who truly understand the audiences and the concerns that the members might have. So, in many ways, libraries are much better positioned when it comes to introducing this type of technologies responsibly, as opposed to, say, the Silicon Valley digital companies.
Yes, I 100% agree. Well, Mark, I can't think of a better way to have started off the session today in terms of that really strategic view of what we can be doing to advance digital transformation. So thanks so much for sharing your time with us. I've really enjoyed chatting.
Thanks for having me.